The year is 1341 BCE. Egypt, the most powerful kingdom on earth, is tearing itself apart. Temples once filled with the chants of priests stand silent. The mighty god Amen has been cast down. The people are confused, angry, divided. And in the midst of this storm, in a royal palace along the Nile, a child is born. His name is Tutankhamun, the living image of Aten. No one could have imagined it then, but this frail boy, weak in body, yet crowned with divinity, would one day become the most famous pharaoh of all time. This is not the story of Egypt's greatest conqueror, nor its longest reigning king. This is the story of a boy whose life was short, whose name was almost erased, yet whose tomb would make him immortal. This is Tutankhamun, the boy king. Egypt in turmoil. The age of Akhenaten. To understand Tutankhamun must begin with his father, Akhenaten, the heretic king. For centuries, Egypt had worshipped a pantheon of gods: Ra, Osiris, Isis, Horus, and above all, Amen, the hidden one. Temples dedicated to Amen were among the wealthiest institutions in Egypt, rivaling even the pharaoh himself. But Akhenaten changed everything. Around 1353 BCE, he abandoned the traditional gods and declared that there was only one god worthy of worship, Aten, the disk of the sun. This was nothing less than a religious revolution. Statues of old gods were destroyed. Priests of Ammon were stripped of power. The ancient capital, Thebes, was abandoned. In a brand new city, Akhenaten was built in the desert as the center of this new faith. For the ordinary Egyptians, this was devastating. Festivals, rituals, and prayers that had bound their society together for centuries were suddenly gone. And while Akhenaten obsessed over his new god, Egypt's empire began to crumble. Foreign allies felt abandoned. Enemies pressed on its borders. The kingdom that once stood united under the gods now trembled. It was into this chaos that Tutankhamun was born. The birth of a fragile prince, Tutankhamun, was likely born in Akhenaten, the city of the sun god. His exact parentage is still debated. DNA evidence suggests his father was Akhenaten himself, and his mother, known only as the Younger Lady, may have been Akhenaten's own sister. This inbreeding, common in royal families to preserve their divine bloodline, came at a heavy cost. Tutankhamun inherited genetic weaknesses that would shape his entire life. Modern scans of his mummy show he suffered from a club foot, spinal problems, and possibly epilepsy. Dozens of walking sticks were later found in his tomb, silent witnesses to his frailty. He was not born to be a warrior king. He was a child of fragility, placed at the heart of an empire on the brink of collapse. The shadow of Nefertiti. Another figure looms large in Tutankhamun's early life: Nefertiti, the beautiful and powerful queen of Akhenaten. Some historians believe she was Tutankhamun's stepmother, perhaps even his co-regent for a time. Others suggest she briefly ruled Egypt herself after Akhenaten's death, under the name Nefer-Neferu-Aten. What is clear is that Tutankhamun grew up in a palace where women wielded great influence. Royal mothers and queens often acted as guardians of young kings. For the boy Tutankhamun, Nefertiti's shadow, whether as stepmother or distant queen, would have been ever present. A child pharaoh, when Akhenaten died, Egypt was in crisis. His new religion had failed to win the hearts of the people. The old priesthood of Amun longed for revenge. Foreign enemies saw weakness. Into this storm, the child Tutankhamun was placed upon the throne, just 9 years old. Imagine the scene. A boy barely able to understand politics, crowned with the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, declared the living god on earth. Round him stood his advisors, powerful men who would shape his reign. The most influential were I, a high-ranking courtier, and Horemheb, the commander of the army. To the people, Tutankhamun was pharaoh. But in reality, Egypt was ruled by these seasoned men. The return of the gods, one of the first acts of the new regime, was to undo Akhenaten's revolution. The old gods were restored. Temples reopened. The festivals of Ammon returned. And with this restoration came a symbolic change for the boy king himself. He abandoned the name Tutankhamun, living image of Aten, and became Tutankhamun, living image of Amen. It was a powerful message. The gods were back. Egypt was whole again. Young Pharaoh was now the bridge between the people and their ancient deities. This move healed the wounds of Egypt. The priests regained their power, people their traditions, and the army its confidence. But it also meant Tutankhamun was now bound tightly to the interests of his advisors and the priesthood. Life in the palace. What was life like for the boy pharaoh? The palace would have been a dazzling place of color and ceremony. Walls painted with lotus flowers and hunting scenes. Servants bustling through corridors carrying trays of food, bread, beer, roasted duck, figs, and honey cakes. Tutankhamun would have been taught to read hieroglyphs, to perform rituals before the gods, and to conduct the sacred duties of kingship. At around 10 years old, he married his half-sister, Ankhesenamun, daughter of Akhenaten and Nefertiti, was only a little older than him. Their union was both personal and politically, a way to strengthen the royal bloodline. Despite his fragile health, Tutankhamun was portrayed in art as a strong Dotnot, active ruler riding chariots, hunting, smiting enemies. These images were propaganda, symbols of power rather than reality. Behind the golden mask of kingship was a boy struggling with illness and weakness. The politics of a boy king, though Tutankhamun was the official ruler, Egypt's real stability came from his advisors. I acted almost like a grandfather figure, guiding the boy in religious matters and courtly affairs. Horemheb, as general, ensured Egypt's military might remained strong. He later led campaigns against foreign threats. Together, they carefully restored Egypt's traditions. Temples to Ammon and other gods were rebuilt. Priests celebrated festivals that had been banned for years. The nation slowly healed. But this restoration also meant that Tutankhamun himself was little more than a figurehead. His advisors were the true powers behind the throne. A fragile empire, even with religion restored, Egypt was still fragile. Foreign correspondence from this period shows allies pleading for help against enemies. Egypt, weakened by years of neglect under Akhenaten, could not always respond. Horemheb led some campaigns, but there is little evidence Tutankhamun himself ever fought. His health likely prevented him from leading armies. Inside Egypt, the royal family faced personal tragedy. Tutankhamun and Ankhesenamun had at least 2 daughters, but both were stillborn. Their tiny mummies were found in his tomb, heartbreaking reminders of lives that never began. The boy king had no heirs, and in ancient Egypt, this was dangerous. Without heirs, the throne was vulnerable to ambitious men. The closing years of Tutankhamun's life. As Tutankhamun grew into his teenage years, his health worsened. DNA tests reveal he contracted malaria, possibly several times. A fracture in his leg, perhaps from an accident, may have become infected. At just 18 or 19 years old, he died suddenly. The cause of his death remains one of history's great mysteries. Was it illness? Was it an accident? Or was it murder, carried out by those who coveted the throne? For now, the truth is lost in the sands of time. Tutankhamun's death ended a fragile reign and left Egypt once again in turmoil. His young queen, Ankhesenamun, desperately sought protection, even writing to foreign kings for help. But Tutankhamun himself would not be remembered. His name was erased from official lists. Monuments to him were dismantled. Later rulers wanted him forgotten. And for more than 3,000 years he was, until one day, beneath the sands of the Valley of the Kings, his tomb was found and touched, filled with treasures, waiting to reveal the secrets of the boy king. In part 2, we will uncover the mystery of Tutankhamun's death, secrets hidden in his mummy, and the political struggles that followed his passing.